Right, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for your time. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, all right, cool. So, my name is Vedat. I'm a VMware TAM. I've got this session today a bit different from what's been presented this morning. So I'm going to go through more about capacity planning, what can you do with some of the sort of ideas and tools that you have within VCF. So type of capacity reclamation and so on and so forth. So on the agenda, this is what I have. So I'll do a quick introduction and we'll go through about unlocking capacity with VCF. So do more for less. So what I actually mean by that is what can you do within your VCF environment without having to spend any money. So that is right sizing, looking at some of the powered off VMs, snapshots and so on and so forth. So I've got a few examples which I'll go through with you guys, and then hopefully there are some areas where you can look at it and say, you know what, that's a great idea. This is something I'll when I go back to office, I'll have a look and then look into implementation. If you do have any questions that during the presentation, feel free to raise your hand or you can just ask me right at the end. I don't mind. And also got a section about capacity planning. So this is me. My name is Vedat. Like I said, Vedat. I'm the VMware TAM, been on VMware nearly for August will be 3 years. Prior to that, really all my IT life has been VMware and worked for enterprise organizations. So prior to joining VMware, my role has been as a VMware senior tech lead, also looking at infrastructure capacity. So I'll be sharing with you guys some of the ideas and then what I've done to implement. So capacity reclamation, like I said, those are the areas that I'll share with you guys where you can reclaim some of your capacity back before even having to buy additional hardware. I know you don't, you can't sort of like replace it, but there are certain areas you can look at where you can get loads of capacity back. And I'll be honest with you, for all my customers that work and the environment I used to manage, you'll be surprised what you find in terms of reclamation, how much capacity you can claim back by just looking at powered off VMs and so on and so forth. So one of the areas is virtual machine resources. So that is, has someone provision a VM that's put reservations on or limits, right sizing, has, is your VMware estate oversized, undersized, ideal virtual machines. You'll be surprised how many virtual machines have been deployed on your estate that are running, but you might not be aware of. So with the help of area ops, you can identify those virtual machines and then start questioning them. Work consolidation. So I'll cover all of these examples in a bit more detail. So what consolidation is, do you have 4 or 5 clusters? One is 80%, one is 20%. How can you consolidate this workload? So like I said, you can do more for less. Powered off VMs, believe it or not, when I've worked with my customers, I'll go through with area ops and look at the powered off virtual machines. Some of them get surprised that they do find a virtual machine that's been powered off more than 300 days, just because someone said, do not power off, or sorry, do not delete, because someone's done a change and that VM has got tons of storage assigned. And orphan virtual machines as well. And finally, snapshots. So those are the areas you can actually look at it without having to spend any money or buying additional hardware. So, right sizing. As we already know, right sizing is quite important. There are 2 areas that you can look at when it comes to the right sizing. One is the oversized virtual machines and undersized. So oversized virtual machines, from my experience, what I've seen quite a lot is this, a design gets implemented that most of the virtual machines that get oversized purely because they're either too scared that it will run slow, therefore they just assign extra resources. So that has an impact on cost increase and overspec and so on and so forth. Therefore, you can look at a VROps and then we'll give you this information. So if you identify a virtual machine that's been oversized, then VROps says, this VM's got 64 gig of RAM, you could bring it to 16. I wouldn't go from 64 to 16. I would just gradually sort of reduce it, of course, in a sort of in controlled manner. Same time, undersized virtual machine is quite important as well. When you look at the VROps and you look at the undersized virtual machines, you might be surprised what you find there. From my experience, when I used to do on-call prior I joined VMware, I used to get called out every Saturday for mission critical server because it was underperforming every Saturday night. And that was because that's when backups were running and VM was struggling for resources. So what that meant was I was getting called out, there was a ticket logged, incident managers had to raise a high severity ticket, so it was quite resource intensive. So what I've done, I've looked at their virtual machine, then I found out it was just basically struggling for resources. So I worked with a business, I given additional resources that he needed, bang, that problem gone away. And I was happy because I wasn't getting unnecessary calls, less incidents, business was happy because they were not impacted. So those are the areas that you can just pick up without having to, buy any hardware or any the additional costs. So what I've given you here is just an example, a quick snapshot from area operations. So, you've got like sample lots of made up cluster names here that I've given you just to for demonstration purpose. You've got like, it will tell you when you go to the area ops, depends what version you're on. You tell you how many VMs you have, and it gives you kind of a overall CPU, how much you can reclaim back, and you can look into those. So it's quite important that when you look at the oversized, undersized, you can also exclude VMs, because when you look at the maybe oversized, if you have a standby SQL box just doing nothing, area ops is going to report that this is oversized VM, but you can actually exclude it from your reporting, so that's quite important. Again, this is just another example of oversized virtual machines. Yeah, actually area ops just tells you what's how much resources they have and so on and so forth. Now, the problem I faced, I'm sure most of you guys do, that I was probably in a similar situation where when I reached out to when I went to head of infrastructure and I said, look, I've got, in this example, 283, because it was enterprise infrastructure, 283 VMs that are basically oversized. What can you do? I was getting ignored by head of infrastructure and head of ITs because to them, they were not that technical. Having over 800 CPUs didn't mean much to them. They didn't know that. So what I've actually done is I worked with procurement team and another team who was responsible for buying the kit. And then when I resent the report, I worked out how much does it cost to have a support on one HP blade, for example, with half a terabyte. They give me a cost, and then on my email, I put £sign on the overspec VMs. So I've said, this is what we have. That is equivalent to one HP blade, and one HP blade costs this much. When I saw the £sign, then they responded, so they became more cooperative. So that magically worked, and then we basically start working with architects to say, look, don't just oversize things and let's just right size it, and then that helped quite a lot of the conversation. Idle and powered off VMs. Again, those are the things that you can look at using my own real life example. What I've actually done is created a dashboard in AROps, and I said, show me any virtual machine, or give me a report, show me any virtual machine that's been powered off more than 50 days. You can pick that number, you can say 30 days, 100 days. And then, like I said, you can also exclude standby and DR VMs. And the benefit with that is you move away from manual. So if you do the review and powered off VMs now, you might forget. So what you want to do is getting into automation, so you get that weekly or monthly report. So the way I've done it, I just had like a dashboard up and running on AROps, or like weekly reports that will come in. Any VM with more than 50 days off will send me an email, then I'll start questioning it. So this is just a snapshot example of, you know, how many powered offs and days and so on and so forth. So you might, when you go back, if you do this in your environment, you might be surprised what you find. Similar thing with idle VMs. You can pick that. You can, you know, start questioning the business and say, look, I've got this VM according to AROps, it's not doing much. Do you still use it? Yes or no? I had 30% of the response I had, oh yeah, sorry, we deployed it because we were working on a test environment. It was not needed, but we never shut it down, get rid of it. Here's just some example, because you can back up all your facts with this, with the help of AROps. Now, so like I said, I didn't just do this once, then I introduced, initially I started doing manually, but then I automated the whole process, and this is how I've done it. It's like I said, I created the report, like a discovery report, so basically it will run and will say, show me any virtual machines that's been powered off like 50 days, so any VM that's been, once it triggers over 50 days, it will appear on a report. And that report basically will come to IT, which is to come to myself, and then I used to take an action and, you know, question that owner of that VM, saying why it's been for this powered off for this long, and then take necessary actions to get rid of it. 8 snapshots. This is an interesting one, so I'm sure you guys are aware. With snapshots, it can be also be quite a lot of challenging. Depends how your environment is set up. So 8 snapshots. The 3 different ways how you can identify how, if the virtual machine is running a snapshot. One is GUI, which is this way here. You got a VM disk with loads of leading zeros. Alternative way, well, another way is through the GUI, through CLI. That's the command there you can run to actually view if the VM's got a snapshot. And the third one is basically if you've got any third-party tools like Avamar or Veeam that do image-level snapshots. You'd be surprised sometimes some of the tools. Well, I had some bad experience with Dell Avamar because they had a bug when it was snapshotting, it couldn't delete the disk, and then it left loads of snapshots behind. That's when this reporting came quite useful, because if you have snapshots reports on, it will flag these issues up. And here's an example. What I've noticed is with third-party snapshots, it does, when you go to the GUI, when you go to the snapshot manager, it doesn't say that you've got any snapshots, but you see the leading zeros on the VMDK as well as on the VM console. Automating snapshot management. So again, sharing my real life experience, and hopefully it is something you can look at and maybe implement it. You might already have this in place. So the challenge I had was quite a lot of big IT teams that had access to a VMware environment, and they were taking snapshot, not deleting. So myself and a few other colleagues, we used to email those users, a group of or individuals, and start questioning. You've taken a snapshot that's been more than 3-4 weeks. What's going on? And sometimes you used to get out of office on. Oh, I need it for 4 more days, 5 more days. and then you kind of tend to put an email reminder, and it just becomes kind of a chaser email. And then this is just like a dialogue going on between you and a user. And then before you know it, you spend nearly like 20 days plus just on that email. So what kind of worked in my favor, because there was a SEV1 on SECM that was 2 terabyte disk. It was a snapshot taken, it was not deleted. That caused a massive SEV1. So that enabled me to build this snapshot automation deleting processing. So I didn't just put a script in or automate to say, look, anyone who takes a snapshot, delete it after X amount of days. What I've actually done is you may or you may not have a VMware standards or policy document where you can say, you know what, any virtual machine that's got age snapshot more than X amount of days, automatically delete it, so then people actually signed up to that. And then you can pick the X amount of days. I picked 5 because I wanted to leave in case someone took a snapshot on Friday and long bank holiday, so I picked 5. And then as part of that, you used to send a notification out to those group of users to say, look, there's a snapshot taken, it will be deleted after 48 hours, and you specify the date. Now, if there was a business case where those VM needs to be excluded from snapshots, I've added a exclusion list. So if the app team wanted 10 VMs to not to be deleted automatically because they had the contractors in to do work, all I had to do is just put 10 VMs on the exclusion list, and whenever snapshots run, you just skip those VMs. But not to forget about the exclusion list, I've set myself like a weekly reminder. Just an email used to come to my inbox saying, hey Vedat, you've got those VMs still on exclusion list. And I'll be like, yeah, that's fine, leave them there. Or sometimes be like, oh, they shouldn't be there, shouldn't be deleted, sort of thing. Now, once I had this all signed off, I had sort of the approval to, if I've deleted someone's snapshots and then they haven't followed the policy, then it was kind of down to them taking their own responsibility rather than me being blamed. Because all I said was, look, is a company policy. So, so what I'm trying to say here is I didn't just go and automate the snapshot deletion. We've gone kind of through this process as well. When I went live, I've kind of gone with a smooth approach in terms of just notifying people until people got used to it. But once it got implemented, it was very easy because it was taking a lot of, I would say, half a day of my time just looking after the snapshots manually. This is the email example that automatically used to send out. So what this used to do is basically send all this team who had access to vCenter take snapshots. It would say, look, this VM, someone took a snapshot on that day, and they put a description, a change number, and this, all it's saying is it will be automatically deleted after 48 hours. That's it. So people know that it will be deleted. So with this, it's kind of, it also protects you because they get a notification as well. Resource reservation, again, this is another area where you can look at. I've seen certain virtual machines, especially OVF, for example, had experience with F5 appliances. When you deploy them, F5 already assign reservations on. So you might want to look at how many virtual machines you have in a state with reservations on, and if they don't need to reclaim that, because we know if virtual machine is being reserved with 10 gig of RAM and not using that, you're just wasting that. So with reservation, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this. If not, then I've just got a quick demonstration here. If you have a virtual machine, for example, 8 gig of RAM, and 60 gig C drive, 100 gig D drive, the total storage per that VM is 168 because of swap file. This is quite important when it comes to capacity planning. If you're planning to design a cluster, don't just sort of calculate this, take into account the swap file as well, how many VMs you're going to have, because swap file is total size of the memory of the VM. Again, if you put the reservation on, that goes away. So, or if the VM is powered off, that goes away. Or that only comes in play when the VM is actually powered on. Now, I'll just put in here an example when I have real life situation where kind of swap file got me out of the jail on a Sev 1. We had a small vSphere environment. I got called out saying LUN is full because of too many snapshots. I couldn't do any much with that VM, with that data store. Storage team couldn't give me more disk space. So what I've actually done, I spoke to the business and I said, look, can you give me a sign off to power off those VMs with huge amount of memory? And then that just freed up the data store, and it allowed me to do disk consolidation on impacted VMs and then put the service back online. So this is just an idea of what you can actually do. Again, automation, similar process. You can create yourself a report and just say, okay, show me any virtual machines that have reservations on. When I work with my customers, I look at the reservations and then they get quite a lot of surprise how many virtual machines are there with reservations. There was one, I think they had on a template, they had a reservation on by mistake. And then every time they deployed a VM, I had a gig or 2 gig assigned. So, yeah. Again, similar process. It's quite good to get that report on. It does help. Workload consolidation. Again, every scenario depends. I've just used this high-level diagrams just to demonstrate other clusters. So, assuming all your clusters have same VLAN presented, you can run a workload at any cluster without a problem. What you can actually do is you can pick cluster 1 and move the workload into cluster 3, and then that can kind of become a decommission opportunity VM. So you can just consolidate a workload, or you can, I don't know, repurpose the key or keys after date and so on and so forth. Capacity planning. Now, whenever I work with my customers, I always am advised to look at the 6 months to up to 12 months capacity planning, because if you have a cluster or a environment that's running low in capacity, is not something you can just buy the kit next day. It takes time. That's why I always recommend working like 6 months to a year ahead. You can also use what-if scenario as well in area ops, so that will help you with your capacity planning. And of course, taking into account the DR as well. Now, talking about capacity planning, what I've got here is a real-life example which I've been presented with, and I was tasked to manage it. So, like I said, the challenge I had was cut enterprise VMware environment. We had loads of teams who had access to the VMware environment, and their role was to build VMs, apps, and whatever they had to do. Now, initially there was the challenge I had was all these departments. It was only myself and the Wintel team that was responsible for managing the VMware environment. So these guys, when they were building servers, they weren't checking capacity. All they checked was which cluster to build done. So that became quite a bit of challenge because it was a project who sort of came in and they built a cluster for themselves. 3 months later, 6 months later, they went to build VMs, it was already full because these guys just saw empty cluster, just built it. So what I've actually done is kind of put a gatekeeper there and build a interior capacity management dashboard. And I've done that basically just using Excel as a phase 1, and then the phase 2 move to area ops. So I just took baby steps approach. And the way I've done it, I said to myself, what's the best way for me to tell these guys whether to build on this cluster or not? I was just finding it a bit difficult. Then I came up with traffic light system idea. So basically this is just an Excel spreadsheet. It does have a formula behind it. So for example, if Oracle team wanted to build and the reason I put Oracle here, because we had to separate Oracle workload for the licensing purpose. So if a Oracle engineer wanted to build a 2-node or 3-node cluster, they will come in here and says, okay, which cluster is free? Yeah, the green one, bang, you can go ahead and build on green one. Same here on the shared platform. If you need to build an app server, they'll come in and says, yeah, that cluster 030 is free, I'll deploy a VM there. So what this actually used to do is give that control where users actually deploying virtual machines. Another benefit with this that I found was when project approached me and said, Vedat, we need a 5-node, 8-node cluster for project A because those nodes run specific graphic cards, and to prevent people just putting random stuff on there, built their cluster, marked it as red, as in it's been reserved for a project, so people won't deploy in here. So to make sure people were not building a run cluster, I put a report in, so whenever a virtual machine was created, my team will gain notification to say VM1's been created. I had a look just to make sure it's landed on a correct cluster. Beginning it was a bit of a challenge because I had to run some workshops with the team to kind of educate them how to build and so on and so forth. I had to update all the build documents. So Unix team had simple as log on to vCenter, pick this template, deploy, and I've just added a step in there. Before you deploy, look at this first, right? So this was the sort of the method that I've used. If a cluster had up to 64%, was okay to build. Within that range, you can build, but you can consult our team. If it's red, basically, no. So again, this is just a quick sample. And then this kind of given us that control back. And then we were working at that time with VMware Professional Services, and we moved this into area ops. What I've got here is just some links and resources that you guys can look at. And I think, yeah, that's it. So this is just a quick summary. So those are the areas, like I said, you can look at to get some capacity back, basically, without having to put your hands in a pocket. And that's it. Any questions, or feel free to, if you want to go through in more detail, then yeah.
On your VMware light system, where can you metrics from for that Excel spreadsheet?
So, yeah, I've got the Excel formula if you want to see it. So basically, all I've done is I've picked up an 8-node cluster, and I've looked at the memory utilization because memory was the biggest challenge. So on an 8-node one, I only calculated the total memory on 7 nodes because I did n-1. And then whatever percentage showed on that, I manually updated it. That was just manual, just to get that control back. So behind the scene, there was n-1. Yeah.
Just a
servers were under capacity or full capacity? Is there any like sort of in-house tools that does that? Is that month to see that? Okay.
Yeah, you could within. Do you have area operations?
Sorry?
Do you have area operations? Okay. So within area operations, there's a section in there that will tell you which virtual machines are oversized and undersized, because that's what VR Ops does. It goes to those virtual machines and learns over a period of time, things about a month, and says, okay, this virtual machine for a month has been doing nothing, it's been sitting idle. Also, same thing for powered off VMs. It looks at it, says, okay, this VM's been powered off for a month. And then you take that data with you, and then you question the owners and just say, why is this VM being powered off for this long? But having that data is quite important, because you can go back to the service owners or the business or whoever owns the platform.
But in terms of like auto scaling, is there anything there? So say you've got a critical service, so hitting the benchmark. You see if you'll get a call out to say, okay,
So yeah, you can do auto scaling, but where I worked, I couldn't. So all the virtual machines that were undersized, it's not just increasing the memory from 4 gig to 16. I had to work with the business because there was cross-charge moduling. So I had to tell them, look, they want to add more resources to this VM to improve the performance. It was fine, but the business had just to be aware of it.
So from an auto-scale perspective, because what you can do is you can trigger an alert that says this VM is hitting 9% utilization over a period of a day or whatever. Because the metrics are happening over 5 minutes, so you don't want it to trigger straight away. You want it to trigger after a few cycles. You don't want it to trigger auto-scale and then suddenly realise that's a peak and not sustained. So the alert would trigger, and then you'd run a workflow to dynamically scale up or scale down. But obviously, scale up, if you've got hot add, will be fine. But if you're scaling down, then that's a reboot potentially. So you don't want to scale down, you want to scale up.
My experience very much matches yours in terms of being able to get an extra couple of years out of our physical infrastructure just by right-sizing everything. All the challenges that you mentioned, absolutely. It is great to come back to the dev team and go, by the way, we have a couple of machines that are undersized. They're going, what? You want to give me resources? It earns you massive brownie points.
It's a much different conversation.
Yeah.
In the past, when I worked for a service provider, we were still recording, so I won't talk about them particularly, but it's very difficult to talk to people and go, I want to reduce stuff. Because they're like, well, we've already paid for this, or they don't quite understand that the performance benefit outweighs the cost they're paying. But then when you turn around and say, guess what? I want to take resources from here, but give you resources there, so your net value resource amount is the same, but just distributing it properly based on the workflows that you have. So right sizing isn't just about down; it's quite a lot about up as well.
Or sometimes it's about what have you got in the pipeline for the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Or you're looking to buy that hardware, guess what? You don't have to now, I've just saved you X.
Yeah.
The other one is, by the way, in terms of auto right sizing, one of the biggest problems we had was servers running garbage code, and there'd be a memory leak, and they'd keep demanding more memory, and we're like, no, there's clearly something wrong here. Push it back to the vendor, and all of a sudden we found the vendor would then improve the code, and guess what? Memory utilization drops significantly.
And if you can identify that sort of problem, what you can do is, rather than scale up, is you can trigger an alert and then just reboot the virtual machine from an action perspective. So the alert still happens, you know it's happening, but you've already got an automated action in place to remediate that until the code is fixed. So if it hits consistently 9% memory to reboot the machine, and then carry on, and then it comes back again, increases again, we reboot the machine, and it's a bad patch way of doing it.
You might just send an alert to the devs, and that way they take ownership of their own machine.
So yeah, there are ways of means.
right. So all that can be presented in a dashboard.
Yeah.
Rather than doing an Excel.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can have 5 dashboards, you can share them.
reports on
Or you can send reports on a schedule, so you don't have to. So to any email addresses or like, just go, yeah, I'm going to send this, create this report, send it every month, and then just set up in the system it goes, or you can have a live dashboard that you can go and check, so it's live data.
Yeah, I mean, just to show an example, when one of my customers did an VCF upgrade, it took them about 2 hours because they were running on the incident. They were not quite sure on virtual machine that was being powered off for ages. They were just sort of too scared to move it because it said do not delete, do not move. And all it was, someone cloned it because they were working on a change. But that just caused massive delay to the upgrade because no one was brave enough to make a change. Whereas if you do all of this, you do this proactively to right in advance. And those are some of the challenges I had, and I thought I'll share with everyone how I overcome. And if you do have any questions or you want to go a bit more detail, then happy to have that one-to-one conversation.
Depending on your house, well worth the investment in time.
Yeah, sure, 100%. Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.